I was diagnosed with a form of macular degeneration when I was a teenager, about 13-ish, say. And I went through all of my adolescence and young adulthood sort of passing for sighted. I just had really bad eyesight. And it was not until I started applying for scholarships and not getting them, and not being sure why, and then connecting through that organization with competent blind role models that I started to really see how these skills could really make a difference in my life and be meaningful to me. Since I could still see some, nobody really expected that of me. Most people expected me to just sort of get along with my residual vision and, oh, poor Serena has bad eyesight, and nobody ever seriously, we joked about me being blind, but nobody ever seriously thought of me as blind. We never did any kind of outreach for resources. I didn't know what a disabled student services office was until I had spent several years at a community college. I didn't know what a CCTV was. I took a math class. I took a few math classes several times because I was struggling to try and do the math in longhand in my little chicken scratchings on the back of my test because I couldn't use the scientific calculators, and I thought that's just how life was. I thought I just had to suffer. And I hit this glass ceiling, and I had all these dreams and things that I wanted to do, and then I started realizing, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I can't even get a job for the rest of my life as a pizza delivery person because I can't drive a car. And what if I went to work as cleaning staff in a hotel? Could I even do that? Would they, could I clean to a level that would be satisfactory for sighted people? What if I missed something? What if I, didn't clean something that I couldn't see? And I started having all these awful thoughts, and I plugged along and passed for sighted, and then I started running into these competent blind people who traveled with a cane regularly, who used Braille. I never felt more disabled in my life than when I went to a restaurant with a group of blind people. I was probably the only person not using a cane. So we all walked in, and of course the waitress thought that I was going to read the menu and put it in front of me, thought that I was going to read the menu to the whole group. And I said, well, actually, I can't read this either. And I never felt more disabled in my life because I couldn't see and I didn't have the skills of blindness. So couldn't see, wasn't really blind. And I just felt really stuck and really lost. And then I started realizing there's something to this. Would have loved to have had that training before I went to college. I think it would have changed my academic experience for the better tremendously. I probably wouldn't have spent so many years in college. I wouldn't have struggled as much. I never could keep up with my reading all the way through college. It's something I'm almost kind of ashamed of. I wasted a lot of time scrawling notes on paper that I couldn't read, and that act of taking notes was helpful, right? It kept me engaged and it kept me paying attention, but the notes were useless after class. I couldn't read them. And I wasted time trying to transcribe them while the information was fresh in my head and put them into a more readable format. What a waste of time. My classmates, who had laptops or, could see and write legible notes, took their notes in class, put away their notebooks, folded down their laptops, and they were done. Their notes were ready. They could go get a cup of coffee with their friends. They could go home and start working on their papers. They could go for a walk on the beach. And I was wasting this time just trying to make my notes legible. And had I those alternative formats earlier, it would not have been nearly as much of a struggle. Guaranteed.
Did you have any self-doubts when you applied for this job?
Of course. Especially after a year and a half of looking for work and not even getting calls for interviews, it's hard to remember that this is happening to a lot of people right now. It was hard to remember, to try not to take it personally or to feel like nobody wants to hire me because my resume says blind, 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 blind. I did interview for a job, and I did not get it. And I asked her, I said, did this have anything to do with my blindness? Because if you have concerns, I would really like to ask you about them and address them and find out if there, would be workarounds. What are your concerns was basically what I was trying to say to her. But of course it was, oh, no, it has nothing to do with the fact that you're blind. It might have. I don't feel like people are necessarily going to honestly open up to that if they don't have to. But I feel like I did my part by saying, do you have a concern about my blindness? Because if you do, let's address it. Let's put it out there. Don't pretend like it's not an issue because it could be. And if it's based on some kind of misperception that you can clear up and then get a job, why not? But instead of just walking away and leaving them with the impression, if they have a negative perception about blindness and they're not hiring you because of it and you just walk away, in some sense you've affirmed their assumption. There may be a job interview where ultimately you're not going to get that job, and maybe that person's going to get a little bit of an education that day. Confidence and self-advocacy and self-efficacy, like being able to really step up and take control of the conversation in a way that's not aggressive but firm, bringing the conversation back to the job and how you can accomplish it. Because when you allow, during a job interview, if you allow that conversation to constantly drift back to the blindness, then that's how that person is seeing you. This is a blind guy, this is a blind guy, this is a blind guy. And they're not seeing this is a potential employee. I walked in the front door on the first day with a cane in my hand.
Yeah. That'll do it.
I think that did it.
Immediately.
Yes, absolutely. I prefer. I've only ever used a straight cane, but in my experience, I found it to be the best for me and the most appropriate. I like the design. It's durable because it's rigid. It's lightweight. It's really kind of sexy, actually, as far as canes go. And so that's my personal preference for cane. But kind of on the more philosophical side, the thing about a straight cane is that you can't fold your blindness up and put it away. It's there. It's there, and you should hold your head high. It's respectable to be blind. You should never feel like it's something that you should hide or apologize for or be ashamed of. It's very important to wear it like you wear your black hair or your blonde hair or your favorite blue shirt or whatever it is. It's a part of you, As humans, part of the human experience, we all have some kind of baggage that we all carry. And ours happens to be related to our eyes and our visual acuity. And if it wasn't that, then it might be something else, But that's part of the human condition, is we all have these little challenges that we deal with. And the question is, are you going to let that ruin your human experience? Or are you going to get over it and enjoy yourself, So it's a part of who you are, and you should kind of wear it proudly.